want to express my appreciation for you getting this special order on this very important subject. Of course, a lot of people in this country are asking, what should we do about Afghanistan? It's a pretty important question. It might be one of the most important questions that we're asking right now. And yet, nobody seems to have an answer. But, you know, I think the difficulty in finding an answer comes sometimes from not having fully understood why we got there. I just can't imagine this debate that's going on within our government today, executive branch and the legislative branch, and with the people. Can you imagine this going on during the World War II? You know, how many troops should we have? What's our exit strategy? Who's our enemy? How are we going to impose democracy? It is so far removed from what a traditional responsibility is of our government to provide national security. Now, they've practically run out of excuses for why we're over in Afghanistan. The only one that is left that they seem to cling to, well, we're there for national security. We want to fight the bad guys over there because we don't want to fight them over here. I'll talk a little bit about that later, but quite frankly, I think that's a fallacious argument and actually makes things a lot worse. But, you know, it just bewilders me about how we get trapped into these situations. And to believe that it's because we get ourselves involved too carelessly, too easily, and we don't follow the Constitution, because under the Constitution, you're supposed to declare the war, know who your enemy is, and know when you can declare victory and bring the troops home. And we did that up until through World War II. But since then, that hasn't been the case. But I recall a book I read in the 1980s written by Barbara Tuchman. And she wrote a book called The March of Folly. And she went back as far as Troy, all the way up through Vietnam, and took very special incidents of countries where they were almost obsessed or possessed with a policy, even though it was not in their interest. And the foolishness and the inability to change course. She died in 1989, but I keep thinking that if she had lived, she'd probably write a history of our recent years, another march of folly. Just think of what has happened since the Berlin Wall came down and the Soviet system collapsed. I mean, it didn't take us long. Did we have any peace dividends? No. There were arguments for more military spending. We had more responsibilities. We had to go and police the world. So it wasn't long after that. What were we doing? We were involved in the Persian Gulf War. And then, following that, we had decades of bombing in Iraq, which didn't please the Arabs and the Muslims of the world, and certainly the Iraqis, but it had nothing to do with national security. And then, of course, we continued and accelerated our support of the puppet governments in the Middle East, the various governments. In doing so, we actually went to the part of not only supporting the governments, but we started putting troops on their land. And when we had an air base in Saudi Arabia, that was rather offensive. The people, if you understand the people over there, this is a violation of deeply held religious view. It's considered their holy land, and foreigners, especially military foreigners, are seen as infidels. So if you're looking for a fight or a problem, just put troops on their land. But also, the policy that we've had in the Middle East, we have been perceived as being anti-Palestinian. This has not set well either. And since that time, of course, we haven't backed off one bit. We had the Persian Gulf War, and then we had 9/11, and we know that 9/11 changed everything. We had 15 individuals from Saudi Arabia, a few from Yemen, and a few from Egypt. But, this is an excuse that we have to go get the bad guys. So where are the bad guys? Well, Iraq, of course. Of course, they figured, well, we can't quite do that. Let's go into Afghanistan. Of course, not one single Afghani did anything to it. They said, oh, no, well, the Al-Qaeda visited there. But, you know, I just can't quite accept the fact that the individuals that were flying those airplanes got their training by going to these training camps in Afghanistan, doing push-ups and being tough and strong. What did they do? Where was the planning? The planning was done in Spain, and they were accepted there on legal basis. They were done in Germany. They were accepted. As a matter of fact, they even came to this country with legal visas. And I mean, they were accepted by the countries. And no, we said it's the Taliban, it's the people of Afghanistan, never questioning the fact that a few years back in 1989, when the Soviets were, wrecking the place, we were allied with the people who were friends of Osama bin Laden. And we were over there trying to, support him. So he then was a freedom fighter. And the hypocrisy of all this and the schizophrenia of it all, they were on again and off again. No wonder we get ourselves into these difficulties. And it doesn't seem to ever leave up. But the one assessment that was made after Vietnam, and I think it can apply here, is how do we get in and why do we get bogged down? And two individuals that were talking about this, East and West, Vietnam and the United States, they sort of came to the conclusion that we, the Americans, overestimated the ominous power of our military. We could conquer anybody and everybody. And we underestimated the tenacity of people who are defending their homeland. Sort of like we were defending our homeland in the Revolutionary War, and the invaders and the occupiers were the redcoats. There's a big difference, and you can overcome all kinds of obstacles. But we've never have learned that. And unless we do, I don't think we can solve our problems. But indeed, we have to realize that we are not the policemen of the world. We cannot nation build. And presidential candidates on both sides generally tell the people that's what they want. And the people say, keep my fingers crossed, hope it's true. But then once again, our policies continue down the road, and we never seem to have the energy to back off of this. And I emphasize once again that I think we could keep our eye on the target, emphasize what we should be doing if we went to war a lot more cautiously. That if we have an enemy that we have to fight in our national defense, then there is a declaration of war.
Will the gentleman yield for a moment?
I will yield.
At the beginning, in the formation of the United States,